Welcome. We're here with Ken from Anacrusis talking to metalgirls.com. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, I've asked this question to virtually everyone. It's how we start these interviews. It's a predictable question. What's your first impression of the 70,000 Tons cruise and tour?
Pretty cool. I mean, I remember seeing it the first year online and thinking, wow, that looks pretty cool. I remember talking about how cool it would be to play it. The summer of 2011, I was telling people at Rock Hard Festival in Germany in June, I said, man, that's like one of the only other things I really would like to do, because we really had gotten together just to do a couple things. I said, that looks really cool. I would like to do that. And like, I got home a few days after that, and Andy had emailed me and said, hey, would you guys be interested? As he probably did like 1,000 other bands, just to kind of see who was interested. And I said, yeah, I think so, you know, and then didn't hear back from him back and forth much. And then we kind of ran into some speed bumps with the band and personal stuff, so we were kind of just like, had stopped playing altogether. Then Andy asked us at the 11th hour last year, and I said, we just can't be ready in time. So this time when he asked me back in the summer again, I said, yeah, let's do it. We'll do one more thing. And this is about the only thing I could think of that I really would have liked to have done, to just have that memory. So yeah, it's cool.
It's like
a
good
good idea.
Bucket list.
Yeah, definitely,
show.
definitely, yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So, I mean, we kind of touched on why you guys got back together. So we're going to ask a little bit about the past and where you're from. Do you think that being from St. Louis, How do the locals
we say
pronounce
St.
it?
Louis, but I'm
St.
sure
Louis,
I'm sure the Frenchman that founded it said St. Louis.
Yeah,
you know,
St. Louis. So
we say St. Louis, yeah.
Was that kind of being from that area compared to the big geographic centers of New York or LA in your early days? Did that hinder or help, or what was that scene like?
Probably both. I mean, St. Louis is a pretty big metropolitan area. It's not like the big 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 cities, but compared to like Des Moines, Iowa maybe, or Wichita, Kansas or something, St. Louis has got a pretty big music scene as far as, you know, we've got a lot of history there, blues and stuff like that. Yeah. So there were a lot of bars and clubs, and we had sort of a landing district, you know, down on the river. So there were places to play. Now, those were mostly cover bands and stuff that would play those types of things. But you know, we had Chuck Berry, we got Tina Turner, Ike Turner. We do have some famous musicians who have come out of St. Louis. But so I think it helped and hurt us. In some ways, musically, I think it helped us because we weren't on any bandwagon. We weren't following, you know, everybody around wasn't doing the same sort of stuff. We were like the only band doing our type of thing when we came out. We were one of the first bands in St. Louis to really be playing like thrash beats and stuff, really. There were a couple of others, but not mixing it up the way we did. And so we came out and we were just like young and full of piss and vinegar, and we were just like ferocious and had all this energy. We had like some hardcore influence. We had we didn't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, we just really wanted to be all of our favorite bands put into one. You know, most bands were like, we want to be the new Manowar, we want to be Slayer, we want to be Metallica. We're like, we want to be every band we want to be, you know. So we definitely had a different style, which of course evolved over the years, you know. At first we were much more of a straight-ahead thrash band, even though we always had, lyrically, we were always pretty different than the rest of the bands. We had more melody mixed in than most. But, so musically, I think it helped us because it allowed us to be our own thing. We were an island, you know, sort of. But then, logistically, when it came to the label, it's really easy to be ignored if you're not in the office every other week, bothering the record people, bothering the label, bothering, you know. So we were kind of just like, it was like a long distance relationship, basically, you know. Like, we would be in touch, but it was all through the phone, and it was kind of like, kind of felt like a long distance relationship. So it definitely made things more difficult for us, logistically, for sure.
So, during the Anacrusis hiatus, tell us about some of your projects like Cruel April, Tribes of Knives, and any other things.
That's about all I did. Tribes of Knives was actually a band that was formed. Our founding guitarist, Kevin Heiberger, he and our drummer, Mike Owen, went to one high school, and I went to sort of like the neighboring rival high school.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was introduced to Kevin and those guys, and we got into Anacrusis together, I had a group of friends, they had some other friends. Some of those people crossed over and formed Tribes of Knives out of a couple of Kevin's friends, a couple of my friends. Right. Tribes of Knives came out of sort of a place of like, they were sort of like light industrial mixed with The Cure, mixed with Joy Division, but with metal and a metallic edge, and they definitely had some influence from us. And I've been best friends with the bass player since 8th grade and to this day. So I did their original demos. I produced their demo tapes, which were basement demos and stuff. But I think, we captured this big sound. They got some attention through Red Decibel, which was a label out of Minneapolis back in the early 90s, I guess late 80s, early 90s. They got some attention. Eventually they did one album in 1994, I believe, but I had nothing to do with the album. Didn't play on it, wasn't on it. I wanted to produce it, but we were on tour, and they had a whole different idea of what they wanted to do with the band, which unfortunately, by that point, a lot of grunge stuff had crept in, so their sound of their album is a little bit different than what they originally were. So when Anacrusis broke up, I had a lot of things going on. Personally, marriage broke up and stuff. I ended up moving in with the bass player from Transit Knives, and over the next several months, I actually played live shows with them around St. Louis. And we did record some songs kind of together, thinking maybe we would do a second Transit Knives album. It just didn't work, and they were really ready to call it a day by the time that came anyway. They had a lot of personal problems, but so I did play shows with them as a second guitarist and sang a couple songs and like backup stuff, basically. I really loved their music. I always did, so it was like a fun time for me just to get up and not be like the main guy. I had to do everything.
All the work. And
I really liked their music, so I enjoyed playing their music. So then Cruel April was just something I did. I hadn't played music at all, probably in 10 years or more. After the band broke up, my whole life was upside down. I had to start over again, basically. So I began to do all of those crap jobs that I kind of blew off all those high school years and after. So I was about 25 and had to face some reality. So for the next few years, I did all kinds of fun stuff. Worked for Goodwill, sitting on a trailer doing collections and stuff. Later drove a bread truck for 3 years, and then I got into computer programming in about 2000. So I've been doing programming stuff for about the last 12 or 13 years now. So Cruel April came out of just wanting to play music again, and sat down with the acoustic guitar, started learning some of my favorite old songs, and then it doesn't take long for me to remember that I really can't sing anybody else's music but my own, which is why that's why I quickly went to writing originals in the first place, even with Anacrusis' music. So Cruel April was just a bunch of songs that just kind of came out of me over a few-month period, and I would just basically sit with the acoustic, come up, flesh out a song, a melody, chord progression, and then I would just, on the PC, just lay down whatever instrumentation I heard in my head for that particular song. So it wasn't anything I sat down and planned out. It wasn't anything, it was really like, the recordings were much more like Beatle-esque in the approach. In other words, with Anacrusis, we would write all these songs, we would demo a full album, and then we would go and try to recreate that in the studio. In this case, I just really recorded and wrote those songs one at a time, recorded it, finished it, bam, moved on, wrote another song. Yeah. You hear these stories about the Beatles, like, oh, they were doing A Hard Day's Night, oh, we need a song for the album, or for the movie, So John and Paul went into the other room, half an hour later came out with A Hard Day's Night, and here it is 45, however many years later now. That recording is infantile, It's like it was hours old probably when it was recorded, and you still listen to that, and there's a freshness there, which is something different. And with Anacrusis, it was much more, like I said, planned out, and we try to go in and recreate that, almost like a movie script, sometimes with better results than others. But so that's pretty much all I did musically. And around 2008, 2009, I got, the internet is a wonderful thing. You hear from people all over the world. And I had been contacted by a guy who does a small independent label, Storm Spell Records, and he does a lot of reissues of really, really, really old, very underground vinyl demos. He wanted to know if we would put out a CD package of our Annihilation Complete demo. And I said, well, I don't even have a master. It was done on 4-track cassette, and I don't even have one anymore. Those were all stolen out of my car a few years ago, and I borrowed them from Kevin to make copies of all that stuff. Somebody broke into my car and stole this case of, and it probably ended up in a dumpster 10 minutes later, because it wasn't anything that would have meant, it would have been, it was nothing that meant anything, but it was a lot of very personal. So I gathered up the best duplicate copies that I could find from family and friends and tried to clean up the best as we could, the Annihilation Complete demo, and then I pulled together a few of the old videos that we'd had and tried to put together kind of a nice package for the very, very hardcore, very old school fans, all pre-Suffering Hour material, no recordings, no Metal Blade tie-in, none of that, just stuff that I had that I could do on my own. And so a friend of his was the guy, and I'm sorry to if I end up
No,
covering all
that's
the
cool.
questions,
Yeah.
I'll take you through what's happened.
Yeah, sure.
He was friends with Oliver, who runs Keep It True Festival in Germany. The guy from Storm Spells, a Bulgarian originally, I believe he lives in California, but so he's got a lot of European ties and stuff. He said, "Hey, my friend Oliver runs this small festival, probably like around maybe 1,200 people, I believe, in Germany, and they do a lot of really old school bands, and he's a fan, and do you think you guys would get together?" And I thought, well, at the time, I'd always wanted to get together again, maybe to play a show or two, and so our original drummer Mike Owen had just moved. His father was ill, was with cancer and stuff. He had moved back from San Diego to be with his mom and his family and stuff, and so he was back in town. And we were like, "Hey, you want to jam? Let's get a rehearsal space and just kind of play music for the hell of it and see if we can still play this stuff." So we kind of started, and then we asked John to join us, our bass player, and then eventually asked Kevin if he wanted to take part in it too, and he did. And so we rehearsed for about a year for that. And in the meantime, during that process, I had our whole rehearsal space set up as a recording studio, and we recorded the Hindsight 2 CD set, which was a dream of mine, was always to go back and try to re-record the first 2 albums, and try to do it right. I know how it is to hear something for 25 or 20 years, and no matter all its warts and all that, you get very used to what it is, and very usually the case is with re-recordings is it's cool, it's a novelty, you listen to it, like Suicidal Tendencies, like this, when Twisted Sister redid, it's kind of a novelty, like I like to hear what it sounds like, but I always go back and listen to the original. I wanted to put something out that would be a little bit more up to date sound wise, but also what we really would have done if we had better equipment, a better budget, more time, a little bit more knowledge. I tried really not to change the music hardly at all. I tried to recreate things as best I could vocally, the guitar parts, all that stuff, and so I think that our albums sometimes seem more different than they are musically because the production is radically different, and that's something that makes it seem much different. I think that it's kind of like Pink Floyd. I think there's always a thread, like you can hear shadows of the next album than the previous, and you hear a little bit where we were going, even as far back as even though people think of Suffering Hours being almost like a straight ahead thrash album, still a lot of melody in there. You've got even like clean stuff like the beginning of Twisted Cross and things like that. So I wasn't brave enough really to do something like Stop Me at that point, where we just do total clean breakdowns and stuff. But definitely that was always where I wanted to head. So redoing those first 2 albums, I think the main thing was for me, for ourselves, and for a lot of the newer fans that I met in the last few years, people online. A lot of people have gotten into us since we were broken up. I mean, they didn't even know us when we were together. So, and I think that sometimes they go back and, those of us who grew up and came up in that scene in the 80s, you learn to forgive production, because heavy metal was all about really bad production and so like Terry Date came along in the first Metal Church. Some of those albums were just, and still sound great. Yeah. But prior to that, crappy production was almost just like what made normal. That's what metal was all about, because nobody had the money to go into big studios and big producers. So I think that sometimes that hindered people from even going and exploring some earlier material. And I think that a lot of the music was better than it sounds on those albums. So I wanted to kind of put it out there in a version. I mean, I couldn't even listen to those. So I can listen to Hindsight much more easily, at least. So
very cool.